We just need to unmute and I'll record whenever you're ready, Madam Chair.
Okay, and I think I unmuted.
Janet, can you hear us? Okay.
Can't hear her though.
No, she's muted, but we're live.
All right. 7:00, so I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission for Thursday, January 2nd, 2025 to order. Welcome, everyone. And let's see, maybe we could do a roll call of commissioners. If you could say your names. Bob
Reinhardt. Andy Rubin.
Bob O'Connor.
Carol Snow, Chair.
Michael Bugda.
John Morgan.
And joining us via Zoom is Janet Peckinpah. Town planner is Erin Mannix. First order of business on the agenda, this being our first meeting in 2025, is the election of officers, which is chair, vice chair, and secretary. As chair, I'm happy to serve again, but I'm also open to nominations. If anyone else is interested in being chair.
I will nominate Chairwoman Snow for becoming year
Thank you.
as chair.
This will be my fourth and last year as chair, so just a warning. Then we need it. Oh, I guess we take a vote then on that.
You need a second.
Second,
I'll do the same.
okay, any discussion? I just laughed a little bit. All in favor? Okay, thank you for your support. And then vice chair,
Same as you, I'm happy to do it again, but if someone else wants to do it, that's fine.
anyone else?
I'll nominate Bob Reinhardt.
Yeah.
Okay,
to be
great.
Vice Chair.
I'll second
Second, any discussion? All in favor? Great. You're it. And then we have secretary, John Duza did send an email to Aaron saying that he would be pleased to serve again. So I nominate John Duza.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor? Good. Consistency can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we have two public hearings that are continuances on tonight's agenda. So I don't think we need to go through the procedures again, and I think we can just jump right in, reopening, continuing 24-42, 155 Muir Road, map 60, lots 9, 10, 11, owner applicant Hammonasset Commons LLC. This is a site plan review modification of the previous approval to construct 46 residential units and accessory common building and associated site improvements under section 32 of Plan Development District. The current proposal includes construction of 72 residential units, accessory common building, and associated site improvements. Ready? Invite the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the commission. I'm attorney Marjorie Shansky. I represent Hammonasset Commons LLC. With me this evening, Ron DeGennaro, a principal of the LLC. We have responses to the several questions that emerged during the public hearing. And I have reduced them to a letter, which I apologize, I did not bring enough copies of, but I'd like to go through the items and then pass out the letter, which will essentially reflect my comments. The first item on my sort of bulleted letter is an attachment of a revised page 4 of the application correcting the watershed.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so that can replace the existing page 4 of the application on that point. The second item that I'm addressing is with respect to zoning setbacks. The development has been designed as 2 parcels, which if you look at sheet LA in the plan set, shows the configuration of the 2 parcels. The aggregate parcel is on the corner of Duck Hole Road and New Road, which yields 2 front yard setbacks. And that's out of your regulations, section 19, found on pages 101 and 102 of the regulations. I did bring my regulations this evening.
Erin, can you pull that site plan up for us?
Yes.
Please, thanks.
On the north of the parcel, which is where the adjoining neighbor had raised the question, the original approved master plan showed a setback of 10 feet with buildings located at approximately 24 feet away. The 2024 approval, which is the subject of this modification request, showed a 15-foot setback, which is essentially a correction of the prior 10-foot setback, which was not zoning compliant, but it was in the context of the master plan, so it was conceptual more than actual. But the 2023 approval shows the 15-foot setback, and the buildings were located beyond the 15-foot setback, approximately 21 feet, although at least one patio appended to one of the homes extended into the 15-foot setback. So the current revised plan is consistent with the 15-foot setback established and approved in 2023, and the houses have been reoriented beyond the setback and nothing protrudes into the setback. I have appended to my letter a copy of the landscape, a rendering of the project, which is also in among your materials.
Right.
And it shows the relevant setbacks. And to it, I would also mention that the applicant can add additional arborvitae on the northern boundary to the extent that the neighbor requested additional buffering. And I know that after the meeting, he also spoke with the neighbor and they discussed other solutions, but he can probably speak to that better, and that may no longer be an issue since the neighbor then wrote a letter that the commission received today. But that's from the setback. It is the based on your regulations and in zoning conformity. The third item in my letter relates to the stone walls, which are shown on the survey that was submitted in connection with the plan set. And the applicant has agreed to incorporate the stone walls into the landscape element along New Road. I see the chair is taking notes, so you can make this all conditions of approval. But to the extent that I am representing it and have reduced it to a writing, this is now the content of the application. So we are held to it one way or the other. The fourth item to which I have directed my attention has to do with safety elements of the traffic impact study, which, as we discussed last week with Fiona and through the traffic reporting itself, was the third iteration of traffic impact study since the original adoption of the PDD in 2022. And it considered both sides of New Road, both the commercial development on the south side and the residential development on the north side. And to the specific inquiry of elements of safety, in addition to the ability of the roads to absorb traffic generation associated with the residential use, I think that one has to give credit to its review of sightlines, the concept plan that was provided for intersection improvements that included restriping, from which subsequent safety benefits have been established objectively in reduction of crash events. And from a legal perspective, and this is included in my letter and something I wanted to remind the commission of, from a legal perspective, quote, the designation of a particular use of property as a permitted use establishes a conclusive presumption that such use does not adversely affect the district and precludes further inquiry into its effect on traffic, municipal services, property values, or the general harmony of the district. And the citations, Behava and TLC Development, which was a Bradford case. And this remains the law today. And I then quoted from Dwight Merriam, who used to be Robert Fuller, but now it's Dwight Merriam's land use tome that is a compilation of laws. And it captures the same case law, that a site plan, not a special permit, this is not a special permit, it's a site plan, a pure administrative review, is required under 8.3G to allow the agency to determine conformity of a proposed use or structure with specific provisions of the zoning regulations. And it can be turned down only if it fails to comply with requirements already set forth in the regulations. And that phrase, already set forth in the regulations, is particularly germane because of the very illuminating conversation that we had at the last hearing about sidewalks and other, even sort of the Conservation Commission question, even the Stonewall question. Your regulations are the sort of footprint of what you're reviewing. And the other things that seem like good ideas may indeed be great ideas, but you got to regulate to them before you can require them, particularly in a site plan setting. And so to the extent we all made a list of those kinds of things, I suspect that those will become topics of later conversations. Notwithstanding this sort of position of the law, which is the presumption that the proposed use, when a permitted use, is conclusive as to the appropriateness and safety associated with it, the applicant comes to you this evening with two offers. One is to fund having its traffic engineers refine the concept intersection improvement plan, which was displayed at the last meeting, and it's certainly in the traffic reports and in the file. They will refine it to a 1:40 scale dimension plan that can be reviewed by the Madison Traffic Authority and serve as a concrete basis for CONDOT and SCROG consideration as a project and ultimately CONDOT or town implementation that's responsive to the longstanding concerns. Over the course of the past 3 years, we've essentially and consistently agreed to be at the table for those conversations. And my client is now taking the ball one step further down the field and reducing the proposed improvement plan into an actual working plan that, subject to the town's review, it sort of advances the conversation before the table is even, we're setting the table, I guess, is what we're offering to do. So, and this may facilitate this longstanding intention to have this conversation among the town, the state, and the developers. And the second offer with which we are here this evening is that if and when the town completes its bicycle and pedestrian improvement study, and if the conclusions of those study determine that sidewalks are appropriate or desirable for New Road and or Duck Hole Road, the applicant will cooperate in permitting implementation that does not otherwise interfere with operation of the site. You know, distances will matter and all of that. But those two adjustments are responsive to the conversation that the commission had with the public and with the applicant at the last meeting. And we think advances the dialogue, especially in terms of seeking improvements to the longstanding problematic intersection, which we're not worsening, but now we're trying affirmatively to help. My next point relates to something that emerged in one of the letters since the last time we met, and that had to do with the septic system design and a sort of random concern about nitrogen and that. So I've appended to this letter a copy of the November 26th email from the health department to the applicant, finding feasibility for septic system installation among the soils at the site, and with a menu of sort of subsequent actions to be taken. And Connecticut Water, the commission is reminded, issued its recommendations for both the 46 and 72 unit iterations at the site and has expressed no concern about nitrogen among its considerations, and the fact that it's been reviewed on 2 levels as to the appropriateness of the site for the proposed installation is notable. And I think the final point that I have addressed in my letter relates to the comment made about, has this been referred to the Conservation Commission? As you know, the Conservation Commission is an advisory body. It's not a regulatory body, and it doesn't have automatic jurisdiction over anything. There are a few sections in the regulations that encourage, or I'd say arguably require or endorse referral to the Conservation Commission. Section 32 is not among them. So to that extent, we are not here lacking any of the required reviews that are necessary for the success of this application. The revised site plan has an increased unit count over the originally approved detailed site plan that results in only 8 additional bedrooms than the commission previously approved. It provides housing for which a current demand exists as the applicant related to the commission, and as I think you know intuitively, in the town, and represents diversification of the housing portfolio long sought in town. And I don't choose to be associated with that phrase. It comes right out of your plan of conservation and development, so I apologize for sort of repeating it. The proposed development includes the applicant's voluntary creation of 8 affordable units, which is, the rounding up of 10% of the proposed units, which is useful to the town in at least maintaining its position on its effort to get to the state endorsed 10% total affordability. Certainly doesn't worsen your position. It not only improves your position, but there are 8 units of affordable housing in the offing. For 25 years, one of the letters that the commission received today confused it with an 830G application, which requires a higher percentage and a longer term. This is a voluntary dedication of affordable units. The application demonstrates conformity with applicable zoning regulations and is eligible for approval as a modification to the previously approved detailed site plan. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to take them. I have not enough copies of this letter for the commission. This is the original, which has, and I've also appended to it, let me get it to the chair first.
You can share.
Gentlemen want to end up sharing, and I again apologize for that. I've also appended to the letter a copy of Dave Sullivan's resume, because I thought, in light of the amount of conversation about traffic, that his over 40 years of experience doing this work in the state of Connecticut is important to internalize. Dave Sullivan is just a magnificent conservative traffic engineer. And it's always a pleasure in my office when we get to deal with his work product. So if there are no other questions, that's where I am.
Thank you.
Seeking your approval. Thank you.
Take us a minute just to have a look at the letter.
Yes, so I think it will look familiar.
Is there any questions if anyone has?
I'm not sure if you can answer it or not, but I'd like to understand the change in the location of the houses, I guess, on the north side. The one that they are, their proximity to the, I'm not sure how to pull the old originally approved site plan up and then look at the new one. I didn't have a chance to.
What the difference is between the two? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Because while the regulations have specific setbacks, in the special exception, we're allowed to put in a more restrictive, we can put in more restrictive conditions than what are in the regulations.
This is not a special exception
It was
application.
originally.
No,
No,
it
it
has
was
never
not.
been.
It was a zone boundary change to allow for the
Okay.
PDD floating zone to land on the property with the approval of a master plan, and then the subsequent approval prior to, being able to develop the property is a site plan process. So the design of a PDD is for the commission to be able to vet out the merits of the master plan at a legislative capacity as opposed to an administrative capacity.
The adoption of the PDD was legislative, and this is administrative detailed site plan review. I do have one little copy, although it should be someplace in the record. This is the original approval. We'd like to see the configuration of the houses in the rear. They have been reoriented, but they are zoning conforming. I'm gonna put that. Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I can pull up.
And this is why I included that language from the case law, because this is site plan review. Modified site plan.
I may be mistaken, but I think you referenced a traffic plan or pattern for the apartment development and the medical building. Because the entrances and exits are right directly across the street from each other. We established that a couple weeks ago, I believe, right?
Correct.
Did you mention that, or was that a different traffic reference? Because if you didn't, it's fine. My concern was, in the traffic study, have there been discussed or anywhere, or does this have to be presented later about how the traffic's gonna flow out of that? When some people are gonna, come out of both ways and wanna go either direction, from both sides of it, how's that gonna be managed? Is it gonna be like a four-way stop sign there? Is it gonna be, that's, I don't know if that was discussed or addressed, but that, it's going to most likely cause some problems at some point. People are entering and exiting at the same time.
Well, the real problem is if opposing driveways are not aligned, because then you have unrestricted sort of mayhem, or at least the potential
So
of
with the
it.
right striping, I'm assuming is that the intent to guide people which way out? So you come up at the end and it's like, if you're in this lane, you have to take a right. If you're in this one, you have to take a left on either side. Otherwise, there's gonna be.
Although unrelated, I think the medical office building has a turn lane off-site. I think
Oh,
it has
okay.
2 exit lanes coming out of that. I can look at that, but they were designed intentionally to be.
I'm just, I mean, as long as it's conforming, I'm just curious, because I just think at some point, if that doesn't happen, that's gonna have, I would think, relatively steady traffic throughout the day, 9 to 5 type of thing.
The existence of both uses are discussed and considered in the traffic study
That's fine, I just want
at all times, which is the beauty of having one body do the sequence of reviews. Also trying to find the zoning chart, which is,
I have the 2
oh, good.
site plans I can show you that reflect this. This is the revision that shows the north property line here. And the previous approval
Right.
is here. Same setback.
You shoot the one patio.
Yeah, you can see the patio just
Right.
barely
Mhm.
crossing.
This was the original.
This is the approved plan. This is the request for modification.
Okay.
Go back to the approved plan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Actually, Erin, if you could go back and pull up the site plan that shows the current condition.
Oh, the survey?
Yeah, great, because I'm going to ask a few more questions about the stone walls. Attorney Shansky, one is that it concerned me a little bit that on the application form, not only was the Neck River Basin put there for the natural resources, but the box was not checked and the form was filled out to say that the historic resources, there was, it was not applicable. So I think that, I don't know about everyone else, but I do rely on that information as being accurate. And Erin, if you could pull up the site plan that shows the existing conditions, it's true that they're shown there. But it's not clear to me in your statement tonight what you're saying. And also I wanted to ask, can we see it?
Well, I could zoom in, but you're gonna miss sections. So there's a wall here.
Right,
There's a wall along the western property
there's the western
line,
boundary and then to
and
the
then there's
north.
these little,
And on the
pieces.
other side, I think outside of this property, on the abutters property, there's something referred to as a line of boulders.
that's
And-
not on this property.
That's not on this property.
Right, I understand, it's on the other side, but I wasn't sure if, like, what are you, when you say that you're going to incorporate stone walls into the landscape element along New Road,
Line them up.
just move them?
Yes.
Okay, so those aren't historic walls anymore then?
Well, I don't know that just because they are old walls or that they were moved by the people who cleared the land for utility and made walls out of them for whatever purpose, that ascribes to them some hands-off policy. It's not in a historic district. It's just a feature and we're offering to preserve the feature.
Okay, it's a nice idea, and I think, in our previous sessions about this project, which is, it's true, we have approved the concept, and the master plan,
You have approved the detailed site plan.
and the site plan, and the POCD before us supported this area as an opportunity area. So, I think in my looking at the different stone walls that are in existence, they're already disrupted. So sort of wearing an archaeologist's hat, which I have experience with, it doesn't bother me. It does almost, I mean, I appreciate your effort to make a new stone wall on New Road. I think that will enhance it. But what about the stone wall that's on the western boundary? Because I couldn't tell from the landscape plans or from other plans if that's going to stay in place.
We'll be happy to provide a revised plan that shows the proposed treatment of those walls.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That could be a condition of approval
Okay,
as a modification to the site plan to demonstrate
just so we
the
see.
reuse of the stone walls.
Right.
Absolutely,
Okay, thanks.
it's not a problem.
Anyone else have any questions?
Erin, what did we say, and I'm sorry if I'm going to sound stupid about this, but what did we say about the possibility of a town erecting a traffic light for the intersection between the medical center and the facility that they're proposing? Didn't we mention that at some point that the town at some point in the future could consider putting a traffic light in there?
I recall someone, I thought from the public recommending a traffic signal at the intersection of Duck Hole.
Yeah, I think we've talked. about
However, that's at the discretion of the state and there are specific standards that have to be met quantify
Yeah, right.
to justify the
Yeah,
state.
it wouldn't be their
installing.
responsibility.
There's something called a warrant, the
Think
conditions
that's-
of which need to be satisfied in order for the state to impose or to require a traffic light. So, once the surveying is done through the offer that my client has made with respect to moving the concept plan into an actual plan, it's an open question whether that emerges as being something that is supported by facts that can be embraced, but your point is well taken, but it's a DOT.
It's their responsibility.
Yeah.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Attorney Shansky, could you just clarify the
the sidewalk offer. I'm not sure I understand what the offer is.
The offer is to permit the implementation of a sidewalk plan without saying, well, you can't put a sidewalk on my land. We're welcoming whatever the result of your traffic study
Yes.
suggests, concludes. Yeah.
For example, if you followed any of the conversations for potential sidewalks throughout town, it is the property owner's responsibility for clearing sidewalks along their frontage. And they at times speak out against sidewalk projects.
Okay.
In addition, if there was a need for some type of encroachment or easement over
Right.
a portion of a
And they
property,
need
I
to
I
be-
would take that as a
Yes.
willingness to cooperate with the town to
Right.
help facilitate.
Exactly. There
Physical
needed to be an
construction.
easement for that. Absolutely. That's what we're talking about.
So the applicant will allow a
Correct.
sidewalk to be built.
Correct.
It's not-
Any other questions or comments from the commission?
The only other thing that I did ask for some information on how the traffic studies are put together specifically, what's her name?
Fiona?
Fiona, yes. I'd asked her to, or someone to provide me with some kind of understanding of how the traffic volumes are estimated for this particular type of development. She was going through some of it. She thought she had a summary that could be provided. So, and I checked, it's actually captured in the minutes, that request. I was just trying to get that to understand how the additional, how the requested change would impact the overall traffic flow expected from getting out of. So I haven't seen it submitted.
I had that conversation with Dave Sullivan this morning, because I shared with him, actually before today, but we were all entangled in holidays, so it was hard to get to that conversation. How the multifamily housing mid-rise have been selected. And it turns out under the ITE, there are maybe only 4 or 5, maybe it's 3 or 4 categories of multifamily housing. So they apply engineering judgment. And that's part of the reason I wanted you to embrace the experience that Dave Sullivan brings to this exercise. And then the recognition that ITE, which is the sort of go-to source everywhere, because it has compiled statistically from thousands of examples what the traffic generation of diverse uses is. So this being neither an urban setting nor a strictly rural setting, the traffic generation that is the result of the tables that the ITE establishes, this was chosen as the appropriate use. And this was under the 11th edition of the ITE trip generation volume, because I think I have volume 4 in my office. It's been like 20 years since I got a new ITE for my own use, because I'm not a traffic engineer, but it's updated, so it is current to the development templates that are out there, and it's derived from statistical review.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Since the public hearing is still open, are there any other comments from the public? You could say your name and
Yeah.
address.
I'm Jerry Cox from 135 Duck Hole Road. I submitted a letter with extra copies to the board. I just hope that you'll all read that prior to any decision. Our family, as I've said at the last meeting, in 2023 on the Zoom call, never been opposed to good development. I think if we should look at those before and afters, I don't know if they can be pulled up. When we talked in February of 2023 with many of you, and both developers and Mr. Harkin, we were a little relieved at what we didn't think the buildings and their location was that aggressive. That road was more of a circular road. The buildings had some angle to them. I don't know if it's coming up, but maybe 24 foot, I had said 30 foot. 24 foot was probably the very closest corner of one of the buildings, which is not parallel with our property line. So the biggest shock to us was to see this new proposal where these buildings, the roads have been squared up and these buildings are at the setback. I take that they didn't change, but they're right there at the setback line. The buildings are far closer than what we all looked at and what was approved previously. So that's something that we're concerned about. So perhaps that left corner of the middle building is 24 feet. But you can see there's an angle to the buildings. We were pretty content with that. And at that time, Mr. Harkins said it, that yes, they would make landscape buffer as dense as possible there. So we're just a little concerned, a little dissatisfied with the proposed layout of the new buildings. If you show it now, if you can, they're right up against it. There's not much room for a buffer. And I appreciate the developer, and we did have a conversation, and they said they would do what they could for us, but I just want to get that on record. Again, I have the letter. I won't bore you with the whole letter. There's some questions about health department issues, no doubt. I just hope you'll all read that before any decisions are made. I believe that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
The others? Sharon Schmidt, I'm at 64 New Road, and I submitted my analysis, not scientifically, but after our last meeting, I did observe the traffic in front of my home between 7 and 8 o'clock, and I sent my statistics. And I just want for record to say that I understand how now the analysis was completed based on other similar construction projects, but I don't hear that an actual analysis of new road traffic. I know, and I'd be dating myself, but in the old days, there was a cord across the road and you counted how many cars went by. But I don't hear that kind of sensitivity to the current traffic on that road. In addition to the scientific algorithm from other similar building type structures and the impact that it would have in addition to what we already have. So I would just like to say that I'm a little disappointed in that and would hope that when the next phase of traffic is evaluated, probably going to be a lot bigger of an evaluation. Okay.
Thank you.
Particularly for safety.
Did you want to respond to that?
I do. Thank you. I'll respond to both. With respect to the neighbor to the north, what is presented this evening is zoning conforming, and in the revised site plan context, that is the review. With respect to these traffic comments, it's not an accurate description of what the underpinnings of the traffic study are. In this October 25th letter from SLR, which is the third iteration, Mr. Sullivan says the work comprising the study consisted of several tasks, including data collection, review of roadway and traffic conditions, estimation of phase 2 site generated traffic volumes, and assessment of future traffic operations at and near the site. It was conducted with phase 1 office building included in the background of future traffic operations, and figure 1 shows, I don't have that in what I printed out, but then on page 3 of this October 25th letter, the paragraph at the top of that page says existing traffic volumes. Traffic counts were conducted at the study intersections during the morning and afternoon peak hours, and they found what the peak hours were, and that is embedded in figure 2. So while I appreciate the comments, and I think that we heard the conversation on the 19th, and I think that the offers that have been placed before the commission are responsive to the comments from the neighbors, but I think in fairness, the traffic reporting has to be considered holistically. You just can't look at one thing and say, oh, I'm disappointed in that element, because they looked at it comprehensively and with respect to background traffic conditions and actual traffic conditions, and then projected traffic. So from the use itself. So I think that would be my response, except to ask if the neighbor has any special qualification to opine about traffic, because, you know, we have one traffic expert in the record.
Did you want to respond about the abutter to the north and buffers and?
We've offered to do some additional arborvitae's planting and whatever else may be feasible or
They'll fit in that
useful,
space, right?
but it is a conforming alignment, and that is the
Right,
critical
no,
feature.
it's, we appreciate that extra effort.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, in the conversations that were had outside of this public hearing about buffering and improving landscaping, was there any discussion even about adding some trees on the other side of the property line? I know that's not
There was-
required by any means, but.
Don't want to propagate hearsay, so I would defer to my client.
We did offer that. We had the discussion after the last meeting.
Oh, great, okay, because it is such a tight space
Yeah.
that, you know, I thought
There's only so much you could do on that.
with an
road.
arborvitae, they have to be really tall and skinny.
Or those cedar trees grow really quickly and they're
Yeah,
pretty elegant.
There is a fence there.
there's a fence and there,
There's a
you know,
white
there is a
fence.
bit of buffer on the other side of this
Yeah.
property, but not all evergreen, I
Yeah.
don't think, so.
Well-
I appreciate your
I
concern.
appreciate that. If I may interject, and I appreciate the conversation. Is there, I know there's a landscape plan now for this proposal to change. And again, we're not saying it doesn't conform. I don't know all the zoning laws. I've never said that. It's just different than what we looked at before, which was approved. And I appreciate the plan. Can there be a landscape drawing made that we know is,
Sure.
you know, because,
Absolutely.
listen, people, tomorrow's not promised to any of us. If another developer takes it over and says, I don't know what you're talking about. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We definitely agree with it being verifiable.
Great. Thank you.
So we can get a landscape plan showing the,
A revision to the landscape plan, yes.
is
It could be both a stone wall update
Yeah.
and the buffer update. That'd be great, thanks.
Carol, can I make two comments? First of all, I'm sorry, I missed your name.
Sharon
Sharon? And to your question on your own survey, there is in the traffic study, it's figure 2, if I'm understanding it, it shows the existing road, traffic, which is pretty much what we measured. So that was in that, so it's on the town's website, traffic study, go to figure 2, and I can touch it, takes a while staring at it, just look at the pictures. Look at the pictures here. But maybe that'll help you understand what the current traffic is and what you can expect coming up in the future. The other question I had was trying to understand the reason for the changes in the layout of the homes. So the original one had the angled homes, and now it's pretty much perpendicular with the more of a square shaped road. And I've just been trying to understand the driving force behind that change.
The design is driven by the unit count and the configuration that makes both the internal driveways work and the configuration of the building footprints work.
The design compliments.
Yeah. Thank you. That was so much more succinctly stated. Thank you.
An engineer.
Well, there you
There's
go.
no- The overall footprint of the homes has not changed, correct? More or less, it's more or less the same, the coverage?
It is, yeah, I don't have my zoning
I
chart,
can't
my
compare
comparative
the
zoning
two,
charts, but it is the case that they are
Right.
largely, they are extremely similar to the approved site plan.
So that's why I'm
coverages.
struggling with why, I can understand the need for some changes, but I'm not quite sure I understand why the wholesale change in the configuration layout. Because the way I looked at it is in the PDD, the approval for the PDD was a development of this type in that area. But then part of it is also understanding what the site plan for that is and how that's going to fit in cohesion or whatever the right word might be with the surrounding neighborhood. And for me, the first plan fits very nicely and the second plan does not. And so I'm trying to understand what the trying to push, because I want, and I see the need for single bedroom rentals. I see the need for the additional housing. I get all that. I'm working my way to try to find an appropriate way to say yes to this, but I'm struggling a little bit with understand why the change was made.
To accommodate the development at its scale, but we do have an endorsement by ACA.
ACRA is, as you said, ACRA is just advisory, I guess.
Right, but it's advisory on the specific issue
Got
of
it.
this.
Got it.
I'm just looking at minutes from the ACA meeting to see if there's anything useful.
I read the ACRA minutes. I didn't see anything talked about the change in the layout. They just talked about changing the way the parking was by the common areas, some of the other. Did you look at?
They do comment on the density of the updated development
Right.
and the impervious parking.
It does say on page, we'll call it 2 of the minutes from ACA, that all agree that the buildings look better in this current proposal. So as opposed to the one that came prior. So I appreciate your sensitivity to the issue.
We have a hand raised from someone attending, Barbara Yeager. Karen?
Barbara, please identify yourself for the record.
Barbara Yeager, 205 River Road, Madison. I had just a couple quick questions. I'll just list them out and then whoever can answer them. I noticed the patios are over the setback line. I don't know if that's okay in this new one. It wasn't, it was over in the other one, so I assume that's okay with zoning. Also, again, I had addressed concern about the large evergreens so close to Eversource's lines. In a few years, they'll want to cut them down, although they're on private property, they can't, but that'll be a problem. I didn't hear anything about codifying short-term rental. And is parking allowed in the side yard setbacks? Which it appears between the two lots it is. And I think that was it. I am also a little concerned about Asa rubrum being planted so close to septic systems, but I assume the landscape architect on this project would have looked that over. And I'm wondering if ACA was referring to building layout or the actual, I noticed they improved the looks of the building, which is wonderful. But I don't know if we were talking about building layout as opposed to the look of the buildings. And that's it. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that the patios are intended to extend over the, I saw that when the thing was displayed and it's not consistent. I think it's the graphic width of the line that shows the setback. So that is not an intention to extend over.
Okay.
That's just the scale, the tiny scale and the amount of information that's put into it. I can't comment on Eversource, which is a constant source of consternation in my office on this or that. But it is the observation that we're talking about trees on private property. Speaks for itself. We did talk about that the minimum lease is a year. So we clarified that at the last meeting. And the issue on parking and side yard setbacks is not a programmatic intention. There are 2 parking spaces that come with every unit, and in 2025, the world will see fewer parking requirements than we had heretofore because we are trying to lower our dependence on the automobile. So the short answer is no, there's no intention to do that. It's not a part of the program.
There are no zoning requirements regarding patios in the setback. On-grade patios do not need to comply with side yard setbacks according to the zoning code, nor do parking spaces residential.
I don't know about the tree she's referring to, but I think one tree that was questioned is actually on the state.
It's on the right, it's in the state right of way. So, and that was the big baby hickory
Mhm.
that was
Chestnut tree.
chestnut, so sorry. And it is not on this property. It is in the
Right.
right of way, and we have no intention of touching it or harming it or.
Okay,
Or should you?
right,
Right, thanks.
correct.
I think if there are no other questions, then I have a motion to move to deliberation. Close the public hearing and move to deliberation.
Sure.
Second? Second? All in favor? Right, so I think we've been made well aware of the regulations and that this meets the regulations. And I appreciate what we've heard so far, conditions, additional conditions that we can put in place to try to satisfy issues, buffers, traffic engineers, and also future sidewalks, and as well as my own concerns about stone walls and landscaping. Does anyone else have any other thoughts or comments? What we're hearing and what we've learned tonight since our last meeting.
So let's make it in.
Right, but we have to have the additional conditions added.
John Morgan? Okay. In that case, could I have a motion that we approve with additional conditions?
There's a draft resolution.
There's a draft resolution, that's right.
And I can bring that up and screen share and add
Yeah, it's rather lengthy.
well, most of these conditions are existing, in the existing site plan approval, all of them, I should say.
Right.
The only one that I've in the process of inserting here for the revised landscape plan, which will include the proposed stone
Karen, do you
wall.
mind if I exit out of closed captioning so we can see
Sure,
your edits?
as long as everyone speaks up, because I was
Okay.
hearing
Because we
that
won't
people
vote.
could not hear. And enunciate towards the microphone, which is on top of the television on this side here.
Thanks.
So the comment that was made during the hearing was that the applicant will submit a revised landscaping plan, which will include proposed stone wall locations and landscape buffers.
Yes.
Oops, not buffer. Along the northern, I'll say including the.
Karen, are you adding, what are you?
So I added it next to where we were requiring a plan to be submitted anyways, so that they read properly. The applicant, in the previous plan, and to make sure that we've incorporated all of the comments and feedback from Connecticut Water, is just to make sure that the plans are updated to reflect all the comments and recommendations that were made from Connecticut Water regarding the hoods and sumps on the catch basins. And a copy of, there was a note regarding an update in the drainage report regarding the sumps as well. So just to indicate that a copy of that updated plan and drainage report shall be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer prior to making application for preliminary certificate of zoning compliance. And that's the zoning compliance that allows the applicant to move forward with a building, to the building permit level.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'm having trouble seeing that.
I can zoom in.
Font this from this distance.
I'll zoom in on that.
The order changed.
And the order seemed to have changed, yeah.
I didn't change anything else. Well, yes, from 7 down. I inserted 7 here to be near
Got it, okay.
the others. So let me see if I can zoom this in for you.
There you go.
Ah,
Okay.
is that,
Oh, that's better. Thanks.
I might be able to do more. You want maybe a little more? Oops. Might have overdone it. Okay, I think that's all I can get.
So then we also had, from Attorney Shansky's letter. Offer about traffic engineers. Traffic engineers, and I assume the Madison Traffic Authority is our engineer.
The local traffic authority is the police commission.
Police Commission, okay, so maybe we could clarify that too. In what Attorney Shansky has proposed.
So that's incorporated into the record. One spot, and I'm sorry to scroll down.
That's okay, we
But
need
the-
it, thanks.
The, this paragraph, the commission acknowledges the applicant has
Oh, good,
provided a
okay.
conceptual plan to help mitigate safety and operational. I can to provide how did you word that?
Revise, oh, sorry.
Refine the
Yeah,
concept.
to I think this is fine.
And that paragraph goes on to explain about pending the results of a pedestrian and bicycle study.
Okay.
Okay. That I can see.
Yeah, you appreciate that.
That's fine.
Those not otherwise operation of the site. Operation.
It's just like a snapshot into my
There you
brain.
go.
Sorry.
You got them.
Stressful.
Great, thank you, Erin.
Yes.
Okay.
That works for me. Work for everybody?
You
Okay,
captured
great.
it. You captured it.
All right. We have a draft resolution. Could I have a motion and then we'll need to read through it?
You didn't answer or somebody. Didn't somebody already do that?
Yeah, I think I had.
Oh, you did, okay. Fire away, Bob.
Okay, which document, the whole?
I think, can we read?
It's all the same until, until number 7. So you can read from your paper, Bob, for that portion.
Okay, read,
I think that, Erin, that
yeah,
the versions that we have don't
Don't
have
have
the
the
language
preamble.
there.
right, it's different.
That's why it would be better if we could read from that document.
Oh, that's a good point. You're right. You're right.
Those are the existing, I'm sorry. I'm assuming that IT gave you a copy of the draft resolution. My apologies.
We didn't-
Those are the existing conditions, so you're absolutely right.
That's why we were
Those
having
were the
trouble
conditions of the
Aligning
previous
everything.
2 applications. Can you see from the screen, or do you want me to pull one
I think
closer
I
to
can-
you?
I can see that.
Okay, you can read directly from the screen then.
Okay.
I'm sorry, that's
Yeah,
where the confusion
you.
was.
If I have trouble, it will be obvious or that will be replaced. Okay, the following draft resolution is offered. Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approves application number 24-42, 155 New Road, map 60, lots 9, 10, 11, owner applicant Hammonasset Commons LLC, site plan review modification of previous approval to construct 46 residential units, an accessory common building, and associated site improvements under section 32, Plan Development District. Current proposal includes construction of 72 residential units, accessory common building, and associated site improvements as shown on a set of plans, Hammonasset Place Residential Development, 155 New Road, Madison, Connecticut. Regulatory submission, November 1st, 2023, revised September 5th, 2024, prepared for Hammonasset Commons LLC by SLR, 17 sheets and architectural plans, Hammonasset Place, 155 New Road, Madison, Connecticut, by the Sullivan Architectural Group, 13 sheets dated April 17th, 2024, revised to June 17th, 2024, with the following conditions. 1, the zoning enforcement officer be notified at least 48 hours prior to commencement of any regulatory activity. 2, that all erosion and sedimentation controls be installed prior to any site disturbance, will be maintained for the duration of construction activities and until the site is sufficiently stabilized to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. 3, the applicants shall utilize DEEP's guidance document, best management practices for the duration of construction, for temporary construction and reconstruction operations in aquifer protection areas for the duration of construction activities. 4, the application,
Yeah, right, yeah.
Okay. The applicant shall file necessary lot line revisions on the Madison land records prior to submission of application for preliminary certificate of zoning compliance. 5, the applicant shall submit to the zoning enforcement officer a revised affordability plan reflecting the increased number of units. Additionally, the applicant shall record the plan on the Madison land records prior to submission of application for preliminary certificate of zoning compliance. The plan shall clearly identify the administrator of the affordable units. 6, the stormwater system plan drainage report shall be updated to reflect the comments, recommendations regarding hoods and sumps from Connecticut Water. A copy of the updated plan and drainage report shall be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer prior to making application for preliminary certificate of zoning compliance. 7, the applicant shall submit a revised landscaping plan which will include proposed stone wall locations and landscape buffer details, including the northern property line. This shall be submitted prior to issuance of a preliminary certificate of zoning compliance. 8, the stormwater system should be inspected by the design engineer during construction to verify consistency with the approved plans. 9, the as-built survey of all improvements, including stormwater system components, should be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer with written verification from a licensed engineer that the stormwater system was constructed in concordance with the approved design plans. This submittal shall be completed prior to the issuance of a final certificate of zoning compliance. 10, given the location of this development within the aquifer recharge area of the Connecticut Water Company's Retic Wellfield, the applicant shall provide a plan utilizing best management practices for the development of ice within the development. This plan shall demonstrate how the applicant will minimize the use of chemical de-icing agents. The plan should be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer prior to the issuance of a preliminary certificate of zoning compliance. 11, the applicant or successor shall implement a stormwater maintenance program as proposed by the design engineer and provide a report according to the program to the zoning enforcement officer. The commission acknowledges that the applicant has provided a conceptual plan to help mitigate safety and operational issues at the intersection of Route 450 and New Road, Duck Hole Road. The applicant has further agreed to refine the conceptual plan to a 1-inch to 40-foot scale, the dimension plan that can be reviewed by the Madison Local Traffic Authority and serve as a concrete basis for CTDOT and CGRCOG consideration as a project and ultimately Connecticut dock or town implementation that is responsive to the longstanding conditions.
Right.
In the event the town completes its pedestrian and bicycle improvement study and concludes that sidewalks are appropriate or desirable for the new road or Duck Hole Road, the applicant will cooperate in permitting implementation that does not otherwise interfere with the operation of the site. In the event that changes to the approved plans are required as a result of other agency permitting to support the proposed activity, The Madison Planning and Zoning Commission reserves the right to review said changes and may require modification of this approval. This approval is made based upon the finding that the proposed use is consistent with the approved master plan for the planned development district for the subject property. The commission approves said master plan with the understanding that the applicant successfully demonstrated that the proposal is consistent with section 32.2.1 of the zoning regulations as the location, uses, and layout of the proposed PDD are in conformance with the intent of and the goals and objectives contained in the plan of the conservation and development. The PPD is in harmony with the surrounding neighborhoods and land uses and its proximity to major roads, including I-95, and will help provide convenient access to the site while minimizing impacts to local residential streets. The effective date of this approval is January 16th, 2025.
Eva? Second,
I'll second.
any further discussion? All in favor? Against, opposed? One opposed? Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next on our agenda is the continuation of the public hearing for 24-43 for School Street, as well as 24-44, 8 West Lane and 10 School Street. These are both applications for the Academy School conversion into a community center. Welcome.
Good evening. Happy New Year, everyone. For the record, Brian Panico with Cole Civil Survey. Tom Arcuri is also with us via Zoom from Prison Barrier here in Allen. So I believe at our conclusion of the last meeting, we were still awaiting some documents looking for the traffic study, which has been provided for a detailed statement of use narrative, which has been provided. And then we had also looked over and kind of clarified the parking situation as far as what was actually on site, what was directly adjacent, and then what we were counting for on-street parking. So kind of in conclusion of that, we'll just kind of talk briefly about the traffic study. I don't know if the traffic engineer is on Zoom by any means, but kind of brief, just conclusion of that. Basically, their school had about 300 students. The level of service at the intersections, both Academy Street and to the north, both of them were a level of service B in C. Under the current proposal, they would still remain a level of service B and level service C. Overall, the daytime peak trip generation was much higher for the school. It was 222, I believe it was. And then 48 p.m. peak trips. That kind of gets flip-flopped with the, assuming the building was being used to its fullest extent. I should pre-note with that. That would kind of flip-flop and we'd have a more or less 90 a.m. peak trips and 156 p.m. peak trips. So about the same number of peak hour trips. Again, if the community center is being used to its full capacity, which is, very rare and few and far between type of thing. Which again brings us into our parking, as we discussed at the previous meeting. Again, building being used to its full extent or for a very large event. Obviously, parking, we would be utilizing all of the on-site parking, all of the adjacent parking, which then would take away necessarily from, for example, they talked about the flea market or the farmer's market that occurs there. But again, one of these events where something like that is happening, it's a scheduling thing with the town to make sure that that doesn't happen.
Concurrent.
Exactly. And then there's also been brought to our attention, there have been previous instances where the local churches, basically adjacent to either property, have allowed for parking for the town, for uses from the town.
So they're both amenable to this.
They have been in the past at least, so not necessarily, we're not saying, can't sit here and say that they would be amenable to doing something again, but as long as it's not interfering with their operations, it seems as though in the past they have been amenable to that. And then to the north is also the senior center, which also has parking. So again, as long as these things are not overlapping and there's not overlapping events, it shouldn't be an issue. So it really, I think, comes down more to scheduling and programming. Again, we did provide kind of what the program and all these different uses within the building are. And so again, it would just be a matter of when they actually go and create the schedules for these things as they happen to make sure that they're not all happening at the exact same time, which we know for a fact most likely wouldn't be able to be possible because you're probably not going to have a business and expo in those spaces at the same time as, you know, they're doing something in the kitchen and also doing a arts and crafts thing for children, because if you're doing a big thing, arts and crafts for children or something, it's probably not occurring late at night when you're having an event for everybody else, for adults. So that kind of touches on those two items. And then again, I just also wanted to point out in both the traffic and the parking and all of these things, we're accounting for over 47,000 square feet of space. So it's a lot of potential people being in that building all at the same time. Not something I believe the town at this point is looking to have happening all at once. But we wanted to make sure that there were enough spaces within the building provided so that all of these different dedicated uses that the town wants to be able to provide services for to its members, that there is space for them. So when you're doing a project this big, we want to make sure that, you know, if we do need extra office spaces, they're there. If you do need, you know, community spaces, they're there, and that you're not kicking somebody out of one room to utilize something else. So, so again, to kind of wrap that up, I don't know if you guys had any further questions about that, but traffic level of service does not change. Parking, I believe we now determined it's 91 on-site parking spaces, and then another 100 and something adjacent parking spaces. Erin had the exact numbers in her motion, her draft, for what the request was.
The specific reduction that is sought, there are 91 spaces on site provided between the north and south lots or central lot. And the reduction is 145 spaces total.
Okay.
It's a lot. Including the extra far-flung spaces.
What's that?
Where I looked at, there was 236 required.
Correct.
And
so-
66 offered when you include the adjacent and on-street.
So,
So that
right,
goes
so
out.
the resolution does not include the on-site
Correct.
parking, but that was demonstrated to you to help prove the
Correct.
point that there is available adjacent parking.
Questions?
On the way for someone else to know.
I have none. Anyone else?
All right. I'll start. On Academy Street, is that why did that have parking on both sides of the street?
I don't believe so. It really would, you'd only be able to get parking on one side of the street safely. We did, Aaron and I did discuss, if we were to switch it from, basically, there's no signage on the opposite side of the street indicating that they would allow, parking is allowed. You know, we both said we.
There's also no parking signs.
Yeah, there is.
If you were to flip it, you could fit 23 spaces along that side of Academy, which it probably would be the wiser of the two, right? You have driveway entrances on the opposite side, which you lose spaces. There's fire hydrants, you lose spaces. If you were to flip it, that utilization of that side of the road is the sidewalk right there along it. People could easily get out of their car, go to that sidewalk and get to the community center. But at this time, obviously, that's town right of way, so we can't say that, hey, we're telling you, switch the parking to the other side of the road because you get 8 more spaces and therefore, do it. We're just saying that based on the way that parking is currently configured, there is signage that says no parking here at the stop sign. There's no parking signage between at the fire hydrant and that's in that location. So based on the dimensions between all of that, we're creating an estimate that this is the number of spaces that you could fit.
That's how you defined it.
And that's how we defined it. So yes, in the future, it'd probably be a good idea to take the signs off of that side of the road, flip them to the other side of the road, or stripe the other side of the road for parking, so it's more defined. And you would pick up a couple more spaces.
In general, I'm uncomfortable with the characterization of some of the parking as in the church is usually let you park there, which means it doesn't matter. We don't have an agreement, so I can't conceptually allow that as part of my analysis. right?
That's not included in
That's
the
not-
application.
I know,
There's no formal
but it's been
agreement.
put forward as one of the possibilities. I just want to say, to me, that's not a possibility for inclusion in the assessment that we're supposed to make on the parking.
That's correct,
Right.
and that's not included
I
in the
know.
assessment.
But he said it, I want to make sure everyone else understands, I don't agree with it. I understand, I agree with you. It's making it very clear to everyone. It's not part of the calculus.
And just to clarify our position, we're not saying that anybody should have the right to utilize other people's private
I
parking
get it, I
lots.
get it, I get it.
Yeah, you're not dependent upon.
Correct.
You can't, church could sell that tomorrow,
Correct.
put it in a shopping plaza.
The town would have to approach the
I-
church and have
but-
a discussion on that.
When I looked at, you have the parking calculation map.
The update.
I was trying to add the numbers up, I could find the 49 new parking spaces. It's obvious because there's nothing there now. I'm trying to find where the 42 existing ones are located because the map doesn't add up for me. And I just want to make sure that I understand which ones you're talking.
Yeah, so there are,
Actually, I find more than 42, so.
so the 49 in the new parking lot is basically from the limits of our new paving. Is what
Right,
I'm
yeah, it's all in that.
saying. There's 35 to the north of the baseball fields on site there along Bradley Road.
Right.
And then there are 7 kind of right at the beginning entrance by Meeting House. So that's 42, the 35 and 7. is 42.
So what about the ones in the front?
So the ones in the front technically are not on this property. So that's what we were calling, so you're talking about, if we come down here, this portion. So the property line runs along the back of sidewalk. So even though it's right there and right in front of the building, and probably historically always been utilized as part of the school, it's not on this property, and therefore, to Aaron's point, it's not, we're not allowed to calculate that, and that's why we have
Considered
91.
adjacent.
Correct.
Even though it is likely available to you.
Correct, but as we mentioned before, they also host the farmers market in that area, and so technically they can do that even though it's not, they wouldn't have to have permission from the school, for example. Or-
We park on the town green for the farmer's market too. Everyone parks in the-
Space, but again, Aaron, how many, from the original plan, how many spaces did you say would be eliminated? Versus what's being proposed now, is it 100?
It's not, it's very limited on-site parking. There's a section of parking here along the,
No, I understand that, but like, there was supposed to, the original plan, there was how many on-site parking spaces?
this proposal, you mean?
Yes, the
So
original.
the layout didn't change, just how the
How we're
numbers were counted.
Yeah.
To clarify between on-site and off-site.
Okay.
There has been no physical change to the design.
This whole
The
section.
physical number of on-site parking spaces has not been reduced.
No, I'm looking at, I'm just gonna
Because I'm
go.
wondering
From your last
where would all
meeting?
these other parking spaces possibly go without getting rid of all the fields?
Well, and that's essentially the kind of the
There's no-
situation that we came to, is without basically totally eliminating the baseball fields, because obviously then we also have the full septic system that has to go in, which is taking up the outfield of both of those. We would basically have to pave the entire infield of the baseball fields to put in a huge parking lot that 90% of the time is not going to actually be used.
Yeah, like the church parking. Okay, I mean, all right, that's what I was envisioning. I just, for some reason, it lost the numbers and so forth. The only other spot is what is now that basketball court, but it's kind of parking, but it's just this amorphous semi-paved area. That's probably more of a safety
And
issue
some of
than
that is
anything.
fenced off.
Yeah, kids are just
Yeah,
running
that's
through there all the time.
And realistically, to your point, from
30 years.
existing conditions to proposed, we've increased the amount of parking substantially because where they had basically just the 7 parking spaces that are here and then maybe some
Paving.
mismatched paving that people could park in, now we've formalized an entire parking lot in that space.
That's fine.
Thanks.
Thank you. That makes it clear. I think leaving it to the coordination of multiple disparate organizations to make sure their events don't align, that's a stretch, but whatever. It's a personal comment.
It sounds good.
We've been running with that for years.
Yeah.
Have you seen the parade?
Exactly, I know, it's like, good luck with that.
Old
but
town government.
At some point, there'll be like too many cars for too many spots.
Any other
No.
questions or comments from commissioners?
No, I'm good.
And
Yeah.
since we are still open as a public hearing, any questions or comments from public?
Yes, my name is Tom Lee. I live at 17 Bradley Road, and I'm also vice president of the Deacon John Gray Foundation. And so I had counted up a bunch of parking places in the area. And so I'm going to echo a lot of the things that you had said. I had counted, the Great House had allowed the Madison Lyric Stage to put on performances there. And we had gotten permission from St. Andrew's Church to park in that area. So there were like 43 parking areas that were part of St. Andrew's Church that were regularly used for Madison Lyric Stage performances, okay? And then there's also like 31 parking areas that are right adjacent to that area that are part of the Congregational Church that are frequently used, where I see people park there and then they bring their kids over to play in the playground. Okay, so they are regularly used, okay? Now, the other comment I wanted to make is with Academy Street, frequently people who attend the church park on both sides of the road, okay? And that makes it impassable for cars going both directions, okay? So it really would have to be that there would be parking only on one side if there's going to be two-way traffic.
If it's necessary, I agree.
I'm not sure emergency. Get through there. I don't think the fire truck could get through there if it was cars on both sides.
Yeah, yeah, it would probably be blocked. But there are like 50 parking places that are part of the senior center and the American Legion Hall, okay? So that's commonly used like anytime there's a big event downtown. So I mean, what surprised me in a way is there really is a lot of parking in that general area that regularly gets used for the farmers markets and the concerts and the various things that happen in that area. So anyway, I have a map here that I just wanted to pass on where, this is a Google map. You see me keeping track of a lot of the numbers like that. Yeah. So, it's a Google map and I put in where some of the parking places are. Near the town hall, there's like 5 spaces that are actually treated. But anyway, do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
This is a trivial comment, but St. Andrews,
St. Margaret's.
That's
Oh, St. Margaret's, yeah.
St. Andrews is farther out.
Yeah,
Up Durham Road, yeah.
yeah,
The point's the same.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Stay by it.
Yes.
If there are no other comments or questions, can I have a motion that we close the public hearing and deliberations? Bernhardt, second. Andy, the extension, favor? Okay, we're in deliberations. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you all.
Question.
Yeah.
So since the town of Gap, we have to town to do some things about the street parking. Usually we
That's a
can.
question for our town staff. Erin, did you?
You can make a suggestion. You can't require it as part of this application as a condition. For the same manner, you can't require off-site parking,
Churches.
To be
I
dependent
get
on.
that, yeah.
you know, off-site improvements, but you can make the recommendation that the town engineer and local traffic authority
Consider.
review the parking on school, on, Academy ahead of, you know,
They're gonna have to.
development to see what's safest.
It should be done anyway.
It should be done anyway.
Regardless of it.
Yeah,
You can knock the building down.
for everybody.
That's right.
Any other concerns?
That make kind of recommendation. My recommendation is that on Academy, yeah. Thank you. On Academy, if you have parking on both sides, it's not wide enough. If the parking is on the opposite side of the school, they need more crosswalks. There's only one at the base, and people are gonna cut across the midway down to get into the building.
Right.
They're gonna cut around the back of the building to get into the front part. So either we need to put parking, which would be more appropriate on the community center side of
West side.
Academy, which would be up against the baseball field where everyone parks during the softball games. So they're gonna park there anyway. So we'll end up with cars on both sides, which will then be just havoc. It's real narrow.
Aaron, can you
And
pull that
also-
document up, because I don't think we all got it.
Sometimes there are events which may not
What
be
document?
scheduled on the church.
Are you
which
doing
they
the-
want
are you
to
adding
have
to the
free
draft
access to the
resolution?
church.
Yes, but I was just listening.
Oh, sorry.
He was
I'm sorry.
doing that, but yes,
I just wanted to see it because we don't see it.
yes, I had every intention
So
of
that when
bringing
we
that
see
up.
what you're adding to it, we can see what
Here, here,
you're
here.
typing. From the two ends of the table onto the screen. Thank you so much.
I have the, yes, I was just gonna let
Sorry, I interrupted.
Bob finish. No, no.
Starting.
Thank you.
So this is the language regarding the reduction in the parking. The commission does have to make a finding regarding the parking reduction. And that's where I added, as there is additional parking provided within the near vicinity of the 3 town parcels and on town roads, the commission recommends the town further investigate on-street parking along Academy Street to determine whether it is appropriate on both east and west sides of the road.
Great. Thank you. Motion to approve?
All
Sorry,
right,
Just to
John,
remind,
Sections?
these are two separate
sections?
applications
Do
that
we have-
are included
concurrently, yeah.
in one
One
resolution.
approval. Okay, great. John
So I
Morgan,
get 2 for 1.
It's a two-
Wow, look at that. 2 for.
you're on.
All right, go Joe.
The following
You
draft,
want me to
I'm not, I'm,
turn it to, or you?
the following draft resolution is offered. Voted that the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approves application number 24-43 for School Street, map 38, lot 138, owner applicant, Town of Madison, special exception application per section 3.4B and major downtown village district alteration for building alterations and site improvements related to the conversion of the former Academy School into a community center, and application number 22-44, 8 Meeting House Lane and 10 School Street, map 38, lots 136 and 137, zone R-2, owner applicant, Town of Madison, site plan modification application, and major downtown village district alteration for site improvements related to the conversion of the former Academy School into a community center, as shown on plan set Academy School, Madison Community Center, 4 School Street, Madison, Connecticut, by Cole Civil and Survey, Quinsonberry, Arcari, Malik Architecture, and Kent Frost Landscape Architecture. Sheets S1, C1-3, ES1, D1-D2, SSDS 1-4, PH1, L1-L3, L4-L4.4, A0-1, A1-0-A1-3,
Tongue twister.
A4-A6, prepared for the town of Madison, dated September 16th, 2024, revised to November 6th, 2024, and supplemental application documents with the following conditions. 1, that the zoning enforcement officer be notified at least 48 hours prior to a commencement of any regulated activity. That all erosion and sedimentation controls be installed prior to any site disturbance and be maintained for the duration of construction activities until the site is sufficiently stabilized to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. All site lining shall be installed according to plans with a color temperature of 3000 K. The stormwater system shall be inspected by the design engineer during construction to verify consistency with the approved plans. An as-built survey of all improvements, including stormwater system components, shall be submitted to the zoning enforcement officer with written verification from a licensed engineer that the stormwater system was constructed in accordance with the approved design plans. This submittal shall be completed prior to the issuance of a final certificate of zoning compliance. The town shall implement the stormwater maintenance program as proposed by the design engineer and provide a report according to the program to the zoning enforcement officer. Effort shall be made to reduce or minimize rooftop mechanical equipment and ducts from view, especially near the entry area. Be it further voted that the commission reduces the parking requirement of 4 School Street and 8 Meeting House Lane and 10 School Street by 145 parking spaces, 236 required, 91 provided on site, and approves the use of shared parking per section 8.2 of the zoning regulations as the applicant has successfully demonstrated additional parking provided within the near vicinity of the 3 town parcels and on adjacent town roads. The commission recommends that the town further investigate on-street parking along Academy Street to determine whether it is appropriate on both east and west sides of the road. In the event that changes to the approved plans are required as a result of other agency permitting to support the proposed activity, the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission reserves the right to review said changes and may require modification of this approval. This approval is made based upon the finding that the public convenience and welfare of our residents and visitors will be served by this new community-focused building. The proposed use is permitted in the district and all standards, prerequisites, and conditions by the regulations have been met. The proposed use is in accordance with the comprehensive plan and is an appropriate adaptive reuse of a former educational building. The effective date of this approval is January 16, 2025, and upon filing of the certificate of special exception on the Madison land records.
Hallelujah.
Thank you.
Nicely done, John.
Can I have a second?
You got the second.
And I would like to just add one more thing, Aaron. I wondered if we could say that it's in accordance with plan of conservation and development. Say comprehensive plan.
Does John have to start from the beginning?
Yes.
No.
Guy.
Because I think it does. I think it, it is supported by the plan of conservation and development. So let's go ahead and say so. Great, thank you. Okay,
This implies congestion parking.
we'll see.
That's
I think we're ready for a vote then? All in favor? And I don't know about Janet. Aaron?
Janet?
She's
She's
here,
waving.
yes,
She's
waving.
waving.
She's waving, okay, I can't see her on our big screen. Great, okay, it's unanimous. Thank you,
Great.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Doing a little healthier this time.
Yay me.
All right, I guess a motion
Thanks,
to
Brian.
close the public hearing. No, we did that already, I guess. All set. Okay.
The public is there.
Done with those. So we have one pending application for our January 16th meeting. We already have a public hearing scheduled for 24-45 341 Opening Mill Road. That's the Country Schools application for a new engineering classroom and maintenance building. So to be continued at our next meeting. Approval of minutes, John Douza isn't here, but can I go ahead and propose that we accept them
As is.
as is, unless I actually had one spell check for your last name again.
Everybody does that. They reverse the G and the D. Oh,
Well, it was Bugba instead of Bugda. Otherwise, I thought that looked great. Anybody else have anything else? Janet, are you, okay?
Everything's good. I wasn't there, so.
Oh, right, you can abstain then. So could I have a motion to approve the minutes in the second? Actually.
Quick draw over here, geez.
Now can we have a vote?
Yes.
All in favor to approve the minutes? Janet's abstaining because she wasn't there. Okay, so remarks, I guess I want to say thanks for making me chair again, I think. And I also wanted to encourage you, if you've had any training sessions, that you had for 2024, to go ahead and submit them to you, Erin.
Yes, please share any documentation that you've received that you have not yet forwarded to me to show compliance with the statutes for your required training. Also, to let you know, there will be the Bar Association's annual,
Biannual?
yeah, biennial, every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
Every 2 year training in March. And that's a virtual training that will satisfy all of your continuing ed requirements. And we'll send you that information. If you do register and provide us with documentation that you attended, we can likely reimburse that expense for you. But registering for the event, I would register early this month when you do receive my email so that you can make sure that you get the updated Bar Association book,
all right, so-
the large binder that they
so
send
I'm due
out.
again too, right?
Yes, I will resend what the requirements are.
Yeah,
We've
please do
had
that.
a
The sooner the better.
self-reporting status for folks, but it's based upon when you've been appointed and your number of hours.
Okay.
And then there's a requirement for the affordable housing component hour included in that, which would be satisfied. The Bar Association would adjust that training to make sure that they would check all of the boxes
Okay.
for folks.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Great. Do you have anything else? The only other item I wanted to let the commission know is that we've been actively working to transfer to digital platform for all of our permitting needs in the office. We've gone through a massive scanning project that's concluding. All of our paper files, been able to successfully ship those out and have them digitized. And I'm in the process of having that approved by the state as our official record keeping for those. So we've cleared out a great number of file cabinets. Unfortunately, they are all under counters, so I can't remove any of them. But it felt really good to clear them all out. So along those lines, it is our goal to not produce paper in the office. And so we're utilizing Viewpoint Cloud, which is an OpenGov program. It's the same program that we use for administrative approvals and building permits, health approvals. So I'm in the process of building out that software, almost completed, so that in 2025, it's going to look slightly different. When you receive applications, you'll be looking at them through a Viewpoint Cloud link. So I will say that the applications are going to be streamlined with relevant information. Some, as we've seen today, and in recent applications, there's some information that's requested on applications that has no relevance to our actual zoning code from an enforcement perspective or a requirement. So we are looking to make them consistent with our current regulations. And it's been several decades since our application forms have been updated. Let's see, what that also means is that we're eliminating all of our online document storage within our website. And through the applications, you'll have a link directly into Viewpoint Cloud, where you would be able to access all of the documents associated with any pending applications. So it will still be transparent and user-friendly. You don't need logins or passwords to be able to access anything. But it will also help streamline things internally with referrals to other departments and opportunities for them to comment directly into the application process and upload information for you. So
And Aaron, the whole process will show also like what is done in what order and who's
there,
advisory and who's.
well, internally, there is a workflow. That workflow is not visible on the public end.
Will we have access to
No,
it? Okay.
that is an internal staff workflow.
Okay.
It's the same, I mean, advisory is the same process as far as ACA. There will be, all of the information will be included into that. ACA doesn't have separate applications, so those would not be separate entities in them. They would be linking to your applications since they're your committee, and your advisory committee.
Great.
So,
Exciting.
yes, all the regulatory boards will be moving in this direction.
That's a
In
big
the new
deal.
year.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. There were some learning curves there and we're still working out in draft form, how things print out and how they get sent to folks, and it's exciting and interesting. So,
Very good.
Thanks.
yes, and environmentally friendly.
So on that same note, is there any problem with us bringing in
Our laptops.
laptops
Yeah.
and using them? mean,
I
could we?
think once this happens, we should be able to.
That's something we could get land use, our
Council.
council's opinion on. We have had opinion on that before, and it was advised that the commission not have. The whole premise of land use application is that there's fundamental fairness, and what you see is what the public sees and what the applicant sees. So having your own screen necessarily in front of you, I'm not sure that guarantees that transparency. So that was the question that we've had before. I'm happy to bring that to our council.
Why, I guess,
ahead.
why would that be different if I printed out all the documents for each of these applications? I'd have them in front of me. Or if I had them on my iPad, I'd have them in front of me. What's the difference in that?
Well, I think that's, I think that's the question
Right.
for the commission. Typically, if we're looking at a set of plans, you should all, back before we had any hybrid and everybody got their own packets of information, we'd bring the paper copies in, lay the plans out, have them on a board,
Right.
or have a couple sets here that the commission got up, walked around and looked at. If somebody brought in information from outside, then that needs to be entered into the record and everybody
Sure.
be able to have a copy of that information.
Which is why
So
we can ask
that's
you to pull
really-
something up.
Exactly, and that was the recommendation
from
previously, was if there's
council.
something that the commission would like to see, we look at the paper, the submitted plans, or we pull that up on the screens, and the reason why we have the screens on either side of the room, and screen sharing for those attending hybrid. So it does get a little more complicated when you add a hybrid component into or digital applications into ours.
Yeah.
So I think
So don't do
we
it
may
yet.
have to
Do we?
catch up on that.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'll post the question.
Yeah, I think it'd be good just to see, I mean, I think the idea is that we shouldn't be on our laptops Googling around or
yeah.
whatever, getting
Yeah,
other
well,
information,
watching
checking
YouTube.
your email.
Okay.
But at the same time, these are complex, a lot of these are complex, and I refer to the submitted documentation. So I can say on page 2, otherwise I have to put it all out at home. And I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
It's wasteful.
Yeah.
So it's the same for me as printing out. I need to be able to reference it. I can't remember
Yeah.
all of it. When I print some things out so I can circle it and count the number of parking spots and all. But unless the town wants to give us full copies of the whole thing
No.
at every meeting, which I don't want,
Right.
I see no other option than to allow us to.
Well, the option is to share it here on the screens and have
No.
the commission be able to. So if you were doing reviewing an application outside of the meeting in preparation for that, you may have to take physical notes and then ask to screen share those relevant pages. That may be the option.
You're thinking we can look that far ahead and understand the questions we're gonna ask.
Right.
I'm just
Yeah.
impressed that you're looking before
One
the
step
meeting.
at a time, John, one step at a time.
To that point, I have one question for you. Maybe you could answer in preparation of the next public meeting, the country school.
Yeah.
Is there, in the request there is for the engineering building, it's a composite.
We can't discuss the
It's a question.
project specifically.
Okay. If they're
Outside
asking
of the
for a
public
maintenance building or an educational building, is it a different assessment? A different part of the regulations I should look at?
No,
Okay, I just want to make sure there's no,
the use is a general educational use, which is a special, the use of the property is not changing. It's simply the addition of
okay,
a building onto a site.
got it, okay. That's right, was hoping.
Okay,
One other thing.
Yeah.
With this last, the new road, feels like we need to beef up some of our regulations. How do we go about doing, what's the process of? Can we add something around, some language around sidewalks or safety studies? Or, aesthetics of the layout of the buildings. How do we do that?
Some of that exists currently in the regulations, others do not. You are about to embark on another exciting journey. Now that you've completed your plan of
Plan of
conservation and development, we will begin the comprehensive update and review of both the subdivision code and the zoning regulations. So
That's a major.
we have, it is a major
undertaking.
project. We have money set aside, a total of $85,000. I believe it's set across 2 fiscal years, this being the first year with funds available. I am, as soon as I complete our online permitting, building out the software, we will be sending out an RFP seeking professional consultants assistance in updating that. So that includes a legal review of what needs to change based on statutory updates and things like that over the years. It includes cleaning up documents, putting like with like. Some substantive changes, as you're suggesting, are on the table as well in that, but overall making it a lot more user-friendly for residents, staff, commissioners. You know, you'll look at the regulations and oftentimes you're understanding something in one section and then 30 pages
It says something.
from there,
Yeah.
there's an I gotcha that you weren't aware of. So
Yeah.
and that's common. It's common when updates occur and they're added on to the back of the regulations. It's a similar process that I went through when I was with the town of Guilford
I was
as
just gonna say
well.
that Guilford has done it, and so check out
So,
Guilford's regs if you get a chance, because I think they're really much improved. They're great.
But there's, we have a large file in our office, just from staff. Zoning enforcement, my former zoning enforcement officer, my current zoning enforcement officer, my notes that I've taken as far as things that need to be updated or problematic that we found
Improved.
along the way.
Yeah.
So,
Taking notes?
yep, it's a big job and it will likely take us 1 to
Couple
2
years.
years, not
Meaning maybe.
not as long as the POCD, hopefully. But yes, that's the goal. Now you have a great master plan and the goal is also to have your regulations not
Align.
create any roadblocks, but also to help facilitate the POCD. So,
To John's point, I feel like sometimes the regulations are used in a way to get an approval because that's what the regulations say. It's not necessarily what I would think the right thing to do is. So in a large development, a 15-foot setback to me is just not appropriate. I don't want to, if we're waiting, if it's a year, and I understand why it's complex, But if you have to wait a year and a half to be more developments that, and have 15-foot setbacks, which I'm gonna say no to, even though the regulations say it's okay, I'd rather try to get ahead of the curve, but I'm not sure how to put into place some of these changes in the regulations without incurring the cost of all the legal review to make sure we're not doing anything wrong or conflicts. Is there any way, I mean,
Well,
it's something we should consider.
I
Aside
think
from
you have
the
to be
cost.
more specific. If you're looking specifically at a PDD regulation, those exist on 3 properties in town approved with master plans. So I don't see a large alarming situation
No.
of setback standards in section 32. And I don't recommend piecemeal regulation changes
Can't do that.
on the cusp of going through a more comprehensive update.
Okay.
If you personally disagree with that or don't find that appropriate, you can do what you did today and vote against that specific
I know, but it doesn't
proposal, but
change anything.
you know, I think we have some challenges in the zoning regulations and we have some language that doesn't
Yeah.
work. And I see that by looking through the record of applications that go before the zoning board of appeals seeking variances. And when you start to track back through the years and seeing what the requests are, you notice when there is a problem in the regulations versus a unique situation on a particular property. So we do have a list of those, and those I think are more pressing.
Okay.
But I think, you know, I think it is important to go through the process thoughtfully and that's just my 2 cents.
It's just frustrating.
Yep.
I don't think there's a way
Okay,
to decide
so 2025, something to look forward to, a lot to look forward to.
Yes,
Yes, we do.
On that note, unless there's further questions or comments or anything, discussion, could I have a motion to adjourn? Dave, second? Bob? Any discussion?
that.
All in favor? Janet, good to see you.
Yeah, good seeing you.